chair at this time calls Ms. Charla Bradshaw, testifying against House Bill 93 with the Texas Family Law Foundation.
Yes, thank you. My name is Charla Bradshaw. I'm here on behalf of the Texas Family Law Foundation, and I'm here opposing the bill on behalf of the foundation. And I'm board certified in family law, and I've practiced 24 years. And, you know, in sitting here listening to all of this today, the main people that this is going to affect negatively are those who want to agree that they don't want to be married anymore. And in order to do that, if they have children, they're going to have to find some kind of fault ground. They're going to have to put that in the documents. Somebody's going to have to agree to that, and that is going to stagnate people being able to settle.
There's some legal anomalies actually with the process of no-fault divorce. It's short circuits due process. It's really the only legal maneuver that we have that doesn't allow a response, that doesn't allow a defense, that does not allow some kind of answer to keep whatever legal action is being taken from happening. As far as we're aware, every time in Texas that no-fault divorce has been filed, it's been granted, and so there's never been a relief, and that just seems to really be a hindrance to the due process side of things. And you'll hear from some witnesses today who will agree with that.
What this will do is pretty much every case that's going to be a divorce case is going to have to go to trial. Because 99% of the time, nobody's going to admit the fault. Most of the time, if you have a divorce trial and there has been adultery or cruel treatment, the courts don't grant it on that ground because they don't want that shown to the children.
Along with that, we heard other concerns that if you go to away from a no-fault divorce standard, it might cause people to air the dirty laundry or put details out there in public that they don't want their children to know about in future generations or at future times. That's why we've added the section on there for confidentiality. From now on, the records would be not so much sealed, but they would be the redacted, and that sensitive personal information would not be made of a public record. And the only people who could access that record would be the parties to the suit.
The other thing is that with regard to kids, why force all these cases to go to trial and fault to be had or made up or whatever, if you will, in order for the parents to get divorced when it didn't really happen. And so, to me, people who have children who want to get divorced, I'm not sure why they would be treated differently than people who don't have children and want to get divorced, because then the children are staying in a home where both people don't want to be married, but they have children.
Also, one of our hesitations is what studies have shown over and over again, decade after decade, of what the breakdown of the family or divorced families do to the children of those families. And so they're more likely to grow up in poverty, they're more likely to find themselves in jail, more likely to drop out of school, more likely to have health problems, physical, emotional, than other children who are raised in two-parent homes. It happens in every case. There's always exceptions to every rule, but that's what studies have shown us time and time again.
The other thing is, if in fact that, and I believe you spoke about this, is that if I'm just going to call it the innocent spouse wants to get divorced, and they go to trial and they can't prove the fault, then they stay married. Now we're punishing the person who's not the wrongdoer, who wants to get divorced, but now they have to stay married, which goes to someone who's abused, et cetera, et cetera.
And so when we first filed the bill, we were just seeking to get rid of insupportability altogether. After talking to various individuals and concerned individuals, they said, well, maybe you could more target your concerns, those of due process and when children are involved. So that's what we came up with the committee substitute. So it's not just striking insupportability from the code. If there are two individuals who get married, who just feel like they no longer want to make it work, wasn't right for them, and they consent to it, it's consensual, they can still file for no-fault divorce. But there can be no unilateral no-fault divorce in this instance, as that violates the due process standard, and it also would prohibit parents who have children from filing a no-fault divorce because of the weighty measures entailed with that process.
You know, the rules of evidence make lawsuits very expensive. The hearsay rules make lawsuits very expensive. So in order to put on the case and prove this fault, you're going to have witnesses there. They're going to have to. You talk about attorney's fees soaring. Divorce courts will be inundated with cases because they have to go to trial because nobody's going to admit the fault. Okay, take me to trial. Well, now you have this quote-unquote innocent spouse who has to go to trial and put on their case and pay way more than they, had they been able to just agreed on the divorce.
Representative Theory, I thought you had an interesting point when we talked about the 60s and 70s when these no-fault divorce bills were coming into place, and one of the leading groups was the National Organization for Women because of what they thought it was going to do. Did you know that just a couple decades after that, Betty Friedan, the president of the National Organization of Women, came out and she said no-fault divorce was a mistake. It had a lot of unintended consequences than we thought. And even Ronald Reagan, who instituted the first no-fault divorce in California, years later told his son Michael, he said, you know what, one of the biggest regrets of my public life was signing that no-fault divorce bill. Because it starts with good intentions. There's a lot of reasons that it was put into place. It was meant to make the system less acrimonious, less hostile, but we've seen a lot more negative consequences come from it than positive consequences.